So we're moving on to 2000s, where we got Urban Legends Final Cut, the sequel to Urban Legend, which really has nothing much to do with the first one, only that we learn that everything that happened in the first movie has now become an urban legend itself. We are now set in a film school, and this one really feels like a little bit more grown up of a slasher movie, almost moving into giallo territory, which as you know with this channel, I tend to love. And this is one of those movies that I both love and hate on any given day. There is aspects of it that I think are wonderfully staged and put together, and there are moments where I just feel like it gets a little bit lost in its way it's telling its story and needs to be cleaned up just a little bit. I love the idea of the tale itself. I love how the movie opens. We get this plane, we get a colour on a plane, it's some nicely staged set pieces, and then we discover that this is a film within a film, a project for one of the characters who's making a horror movie. And then we're introduced to our bunch of characters, some who are more toxic than others, some of them who are a little bit more bullish and a little bit more bullish. And we're introduced to Jennifer Morrison, who's going to play Amy Mayfield, her main character, and everything kind of revolves around her. She's a woman with a bit of a past relating to her father. She's struggling to deal with how she fits into this film school. She knows she belongs there. She just hasn't found her driving force as yet, and she is starting to create a project. And her project, her final thesis movie, is going to be a horror film where people die in the form of urban legends. And then we then have the cast of characters as they start to create their movie, as people then start to die for real. And it feels as if Amy's at the heart of all this. She is the one that's been hunted down. She's always getting a glimpse of the killer. She's almost escaping, and it really does feel a little bit more moody than the first one got, a little bit more angsty than that as well. And I kind of like that aspect of it. It treats these urban legends a little bit more gruesome, particularly the kidney in the bathtub one, which happens early on in the film. It's a lot more gory, it's a lot more bloody, and it's a lot more in your face. There are moments in this movie where things are set up like film scenes, so it gets that creative element there. It adds a lot of texture to the design of the movie. The production looks really interesting because of that, because of the aspect of the sets, and then the film equipment, and then the stage that they're on adds layers to these kind of sets that they're working on, which are really kind of fun to explore. A lot of the characters are superfluous to the actual movie. Some of them are there for comic relief, some are there just to be red herrings of sorts, but there are moments where the movie gets bogged down in its plot, where the character gets a little bit too angsty and self-reflective, where nothing really happens for periods of times, and you're starting to wonder if we're going to move on any quicker with the story. You start to get ahead of the character a little bit, where you should be along with her for the journey. There's a wonderful moment, a standout image for me, which I really do love, where she's running through the woods, jogging. Now the killer in this one seems to wear a fencing mask, which is the kind of mesh material and you can't see the face under it. And as she's jogging, that mask appears on the screen and the suspects start to appear under it. Everybody that we've seen in the movie saying something that makes them feel as if they could be the killer. And it's a wonderfully portrayed moment where she's doing an activity where her mind is wandering and we're getting to visually see what she's thinking. And I think it's a really strong image and one of the standouts of the movie. By the time we get to the end, it becomes more formulaic and starts to rely on just the typical tropes of a slasher or maybe even a giallo movie with the reveals that come. It gets a little bit hammy and pushes things up to 11, when maybe this movie didn't need that kind of push. It needed to be a little bit more controlled and a little less Shakespearean in the way it tackles its finale. I do like Urban Legends. I think it's a movie that could have been better. I love some of the the way it's directed. I think some of it needs to be a bit more control, but I think it's an interesting idea. And it's not a bad movie by any means, but it's not the first I would go to when I go to open this Urban Legend box set. I'd love to know your thoughts on Urban Legends Final Cut. Let me know in the comment box below, and I'll see you next time on Man v Film.